Welcome to my channel. Subscribe, listen, and enjoy my stories every day. The sun was already bowing out, casting golden hues across the living room where I lay sprawled on the couch, a mess of tissues and cough drops scattered around me like confetti. It was supposed to be the eve of our departure to Italy, a trip we had been planning for months, the kind of trip that requires reading travel blogs, booking tours in advance, and learning a smattering of Italian phrases. Amore mio, how are you feeling? Giulia's voice floated in from the kitchen, soft yet somehow distant. I turned my head towards her, managing a weak smile. Like I've been run over by a Vespa, I joked, though every bone in my body ached. How's the packing going? She walked into the room, a glass of orange juice in her hand, which she offered to me with a sympathetic look. Almost done. I packed your favorite hat, just in case you miraculously recover by tomorrow morning. Taking the glass, I tried to sit up, stifled a cough, and then slumped back. Miracles seem off the table right now. I watched as she sat down beside me, her presence a balm even in my fevered state. She brushed a strand of hair from my forehead, her touch gentle. I wish you could come, she murmured, her voice tinged with a sadness that didn't quite reach her eyes. Me too. I sipped the juice, the cold liquid soothing my throat. Maybe you should still go. Take Sarah or Megan. It's a shame to waste the tickets. Giulia hesitated, then bit her lip in a way that I knew meant she was considering it. Are you sure? I don't want to leave you like this. It's fine, really. I'll be okay, I assured her, though a part of me tightened at the thought of her wandering through the vineyards of Tuscany or the streets of Florence without me. Maybe I will ask Megan then, she said after a pause, giving my hand a squeeze. If that's really okay with you. It is. Even as I said it, something felt off, but I chalked it up to my muddled, medicated brain. Over the next day, my condition only worsened, and my brief interactions with Giulia were punctuated by her phone buzzing incessantly. She seemed distracted, her responses delayed as if her mind were miles away. The morning of their flight, I was half asleep due to the fever when I heard her speaking softly on the phone. Yes, everything's set. He suspects nothing. Confusion clouded my thoughts. Was she talking to Megan about the trip? My heart clenched, a sense of betrayal creeping in, uninvited and unwelcome. Hours later, groggy from sleep and medication, I realized Giulia had left for the airport. A note on the kitchen counter read, "Gone to Italy with Megan. Take care, love." Something cold unfurled in my stomach. I reached for my phone, scrolling through messages, nothing from Megan, which was odd since she was supposedly on a plane with my wife. On impulse, I dialed Megan's number. She picked up almost immediately, her voice clear, not the faint, crackly one of someone on an international call. Hey! Aren't you supposed to be on a flight right now? I asked, trying to keep my tone light. What? No, I couldn't get the time off work. I thought Giulia was going with Sarah. The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. Thanks, Megan, I must have misunderstood. I hung up, my mind racing. The reality hit me like a punch to the gut. Giulia hadn't gone to Italy with Megan. She had lied, but why? And with whom? I needed answers, but first, I had to recover. As I lay back down, a plan began to form in my mind. I would uncover the truth, no matter how painful it might be. By the time Giulia's plane must have touched down in Italy, my fever had subsided enough to allow clarity to seep back into my thoughts, along with a gnawing suspicion that refused to let me rest. I called my brother, Aaron, who lived just a few blocks away. He arrived within minutes, concern etched deep on his face. "Mike, you look awful," Aaron said as he stepped inside, his eyes scanning the disarray of our usually immaculate living room. "I feel better than I look," I assured him, though my voice was still hoarse. "I need your help with something." Sure, anything, he replied, settling onto an armchair across from me. It's Julia. She's in Italy now, but I think she might be with someone else. Aaron's eyebrows shot up. What? Why would you think that? I recounted the phone call I overheard and my conversation with Megan. As I spoke, Aaron's expression shifted from surprise to concern. Okay, let's say she is with someone else. What do you want to do? I want to find out the truth. Could you help me check something on her laptop? She communicates a lot over email. Maybe she left it logged in. Let's take a look, Aaron said, rising to fetch the laptop from Julia's study. He returned, opened the device, and began navigating through it. There's a separate email account here, he said after a few minutes, his tone cautious. Looks like it's mostly used for bookings and stuff. There's a reservation confirmation for 2 at a resort in Tuscany, under a name I don't recognize, Roberto. My heart sank. Can you print that out? I managed to ask, keeping my voice steady. While Aaron handled the printing, I paced around, trying to piece together the fragments of my broken trust. When he handed me the papers, his hand was steady, offering silent support. Thanks, Aaron. I need to think about what to do next. No problem. I'm here if you need anything, okay? He clapped a hand on my shoulder before seeing himself out. Left alone with the damning evidence, I felt a resolve hardening within me. I needed more proof, something irrefutable. I decided to contact the resort directly under the pretense of confirming a reservation. The phone call was brief. The receptionist confirmed that Julia and Roberto were expected for dinner that evening as part of their honeymoon package. The word honeymoon echoed in my ears, a cruel reminder of the betrayal. The next step was clear. I booked a last-minute flight to Italy. If I was going to confront this situation, it needed to be face-to-face. The thought of seeing Julia with someone else terrified me, but I needed to see the truth for myself. Packing a small suitcase, I arranged for a neighbor to look after the house. As I zipped up my bag, I caught a glimpse of myself in the hallway mirror. The reflection showed a man determined to reclaim his dignity, no matter the cost. Driving to the airport, my mind replayed our moments together, the lies weaving through our memories like poison. I was going to Italy for answers, and I vowed to return with them, one way or another. The flight from New York to Florence felt like an eternity, but the anticipation kept me alert. As the plane descended through a shroud of clouds, I stared out of the window, the Tuscan landscape coming into view, a mosaic of rolling hills and terracotta roofs. It seemed almost too serene, too picturesque, for the turmoil that churned inside me. After landing and collecting my luggage, I rented a car from the airport. The drive to the resort was a mix of excitement and dread. The GPS led me through winding country roads, each turn feeling like a step closer to an uncertain confrontation. The resort itself was a lavish estate nestled among vineyards, with vines stretching out as far as the eye could see. As I parked the car and walked up to the reception, the grandeur of the place contrasted sharply with my internal chaos. Buongiorno, the receptionist greeted me, her smile polite but distant. How may I assist you? I'm here to check on a reservation, I said, pulling out the printout of Julia's booking. Julia and Roberto. She checked the reservation book and nodded. Yes, they are expected for dinner tonight. Is there something wrong? I hesitated, then forced a smile. No, I just wanted to confirm their reservation. Thank you. As I left the reception, I spotted a couple walking hand in hand towards the restaurant area. Julia's laughter, light and unmistakable, floated on the breeze. My heart thudded in my chest. I ducked behind a column, my pulse racing, as I watched her enter the restaurant with a man, Roberto, I assumed. The restaurant was an open terrace overlooking the vineyards, romantically lit by hanging lanterns. I edged closer, trying to remain unobtrusive. Through the gaps in the foliage, I saw Julia and Roberto seated at a table for two, their closeness too intimate to ignore. Julia's hand rested on Roberto's arm as they shared a laugh. The sight was a dagger to my heart. I clenched my fists, fighting the urge to confront them immediately. Instead, I decided to wait and gather more evidence, hoping to catch them in a more private moment. I spent the next hour in a nearby lounge, my gaze fixed on the restaurant area. When they finished dinner and stood to leave, I followed them discreetly. They strolled through the resort's gardens, the path illuminated by moonlight. My instincts told me that this was the moment to act. As they reached a secluded spot, Julia leaned in for a kiss. It was an affectionate, tender kiss that confirmed every painful suspicion I had harbored. My chest tightened with a mixture of anger and sorrow. I stepped forward, not caring if I was seen. Julia. Her head whipped around, eyes widening in shock. Roberto's expression hardened as he took a step back. Mike, Julia said, her voice trembling. What are you doing here? I could ask you the same thing. My tone was sharp, but the hurt was unmistakable. Roberto cleared his throat and stepped forward. I'm sorry, but I think this is a private matter. It's fine, Roberto, Julia said, her gaze flickering between us. Mike, please, let's talk about this. You wanted to talk. I snapped. Why didn't you just tell me the truth? Instead, you poisoned me to get me out of the way. Julia's face went pale. Mike, No more lies, I interrupted. I've seen enough. I turned to Roberto. If you're leaving now, you might want to do it quickly. I need to have a word with my wife. Roberto nodded, his expression a mix of pity and frustration, and walked away. Julia stared after him, her face etched with guilt. What happened to us, Julia? I demanded. How could you do this? She reached out, but I stepped back, not wanting to be touched. I made mistakes, Mike. I'm sorry. I should have told you everything. I never meant to hurt you like this. I don't know if I can ever forgive you, I said, my voice breaking. I came here for answers, and I got them. Now, I need to figure out what to do next. Julia's eyes filled with tears, but she made no move to stop me as I turned and walked away. My heart was heavy, but I felt a strange sense of relief. The truth was out, and now I had to face the consequences. The night was quiet as I returned to my room at the resort. My mind raced, replaying every moment of the evening. The confrontation had been necessary, but it was only the beginning. The road ahead was uncertain, but I knew I had to confront Julia again, to determine the next steps in this shattered relationship. The dawn of the next day brought with it a chilly clarity. My confrontation with Julia had left me drained, yet there was a resolve inside me that couldn't be quelled. I had resolved to get definitive answers, not just from Julia but from anyone involved. I met Julia at the resort's cafe, where the morning sun was beginning to warm the cold stone walls. She was already seated, her face a mask of sorrow and apprehension. I took a deep breath and joined her at the table, the weight of what I was about to do hanging heavily between us. Julia, I began, my voice firm but calm, I need to understand everything. What's really going on here? Julia looked down at her hands, twisting the napkin in her lap. Mike, there's something I haven't told you. I was afraid to admit it, even to myself. I waited, my patience thin. Go on. There's more to this than just me and Roberto. The truth is, Roberto isn't just some guy. He's someone I've been involved with for a long time, she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. But that's not all. I stared at her, my mind racing. What do you mean? She took a deep breath, her eyes brimming with tears. Roberto and I were planning to take over the resort together. He's been using me as a cover, Mike. Our entire relationship, everything, has been a lie. He manipulated me into believing that he could help me escape a life I wasn't happy with. My heart pounded as the gravity of her words sank in. So this wasn't just an affair. It was part of a larger scheme. Julia nodded, her face pale. Yes. I realize now that I was a pawn in his game. He convinced me that if I left you, we could build a new life, a better life together. But I was wrong. Roberto used my insecurities and fears to control me. Just as the enormity of her confession hit me, the cafe's entrance swung open. Roberto stormed in, his face flushed with anger. He must have been following us. What's going on here? He demanded, his voice echoing through the cafe. Julia stood up, her face a mask of defiance. Roberto, it's over. I know the truth now. Do you? Roberto sneered. Do you really think I care about your little epiphany? You were a means to an end. I stood up, moving to stand between them. This has to end, Roberto. You've manipulated and deceived everyone involved. What's your plan now? Roberto smirked, his eyes cold. My plan? I'm leaving this mess behind. I've achieved what I wanted, Julia's money, her connections. I'm done here. Before I could react, Roberto turned on his heel and stormed out, his footsteps echoing off the stone walls. Julia collapsed back into her chair, sobbing quietly. I felt a pang of sympathy but quickly quashed it. This wasn't the time for pity. Julia, you need to understand the gravity of what you've done, I said. I came here hoping for reconciliation, but now I see that the betrayal runs deeper than I imagined. I know, Julia said between sobs. I'm so sorry. I thought I could make things right, but I only made everything worse. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my emotions. Julia, I need to be clear. The trust we had is irrevocably broken. I can't stay here, and I can't go back to the life we had. We're finished. Julia's face crumpled with anguish. Mike, please, don't say that. I'll do anything to fix this. It's too late for that, I said firmly. The damage is done. We can't undo what's been broken. With one last, lingering look at the woman I once loved, I walked away from the cafe, my heart heavy but resolute. The sun was fully up now, casting a harsh light on the empty streets of Florence. I felt a sense of finality, the end of a chapter that had been fraught with deception and heartbreak. I returned to the hotel, packed my belongings, and checked out. As I drove back to the airport, the lush Tuscan landscape seemed a stark contrast to the turmoil I had just experienced. I was heading back to New York, carrying with me the weight of a broken trust and the hope of rebuilding my life without the shadows of betrayal. Julia and Roberto's departure from my life was the beginning of a new chapter, one where I would confront the pain and move forward. It was time to heal and find a path beyond the ruins of a relationship shattered by deceit.